Internet, Eric here. It's been a while since I've talked about movies on this channel, and I'm coming back with a good one tonight. It's a film that I haven't seen in quite some time until just recently. Well, no, I've seen it many, many times before, but this is the first time I've watched it in quite some time, and man, I still have a frickin' blast. Um, just like the first time I saw it. We're discussing A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. This came out in 87 and directed by Chuck Russell, who did The Mask and it says Eraser, two fun movies I really enjoy. We got Robert Englund back as Freddy. Heather Langenkamp returns as Nancy from part 1. Patricia Arquette's right there. We got Lawrence Fishburne. John Saxon returns from the first one. Alright. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. When I discuss films, I just tend to discuss them like I'm discussing them. There could be potential plot spoilers, what have you, so watch at your own risk. But it's Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 from 1987. You've had plenty of time to watch it. Especially if you're a horror movie fan. So, alright. Basically what this is we are this new group of teens being tormented by Freddy. This group of suicidal teens that are now in Weston Hills psychiatric unit. And their doctor is Dr. Gordon, who is played by Craig Wasson. And he is there to basically, study them, help them get over their suicidal urges, what have you. And we start out with this really cool nightmare sequence, of course, with Patricia Arquette's character, Kristen, which I'll get into later. She eventually attempts suicide because of what Freddy does to her. She's put in there with the group. They meet Nancy Thompson from the first film. She's there working with Dr. Gordon. And Dr. Sims, who is played by... Oh, lordy. Priscilla Pointer. Now, Priscilla Pointer, I just know from the movie Carrie. She played, the Brian De Palma one with Sissy Spacek. She played Sue Snell's mom. But those three are there to try to, to protect the teens, discuss why they're trying to be suicidal, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, they all find, they all discuss how they're being tormented by the man in the red and green striped sweater, the burned face, and all that stuff. And they see that Nancy knows who he is, so they all band together to try to defeat Freddy once and for all. And there's also a side story with Dr. Gordon. He meets this nun named Sister Mary Helena, who knows a lot about Freddy's backstory, and tells Dr. Gordon how to finally put Freddy's soul at rest. They also get help from John Saxon, who is no longer Lieutenant Thompson. He is now a security guard after the incident that happened with Part 1. And yeah, wow. Wes Craven, I want to say Wes Craven returned. He is one of the screenwriters and executive producers. And something really cool that I didn't know until I watched this old fucking VHS tape again. Another one of the screenwriters was Frank Darabont from Walking Dead fame and Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, The Mist. Yeah. Anyways, so I fucking love this one. This one I put on par with the original. It's so good. There's still some scares to it. There's some good gore. First off, we'll get with the characters. Robert Englund, once again, back as Freddy Krueger. Freddy is still scary here. And I love it. He is not the jokester. Well, he's not the joke, the walking punchline that he becomes by the end of the fucking series. Which is sad. There's still some scare to him. His body movement is still he's maniacal, he's evil, he's twisted. I love how he loves to play games with his victims, toy with them. And this is the one where he starts a little bit with the wisecracks, but it's not overkill, and that's great. So he's having a little, like I said, he's having fun with his victims, and it's fun for the audience, you know. He's not in the shadows that much anymore. I mean, you get to see him in full makeup quite a bit in this film. I mean, there's lots of times when he's in the shadows, chasing or stalking. But there's times when he's right there in your face and you see him, hat off and everything. So you see the full makeup, on Englund's face. There's a scene where he rips off his shirt. And you finally get to see his chest of souls, of all the souls of all the trapped victims of his. So that's cool. The characters. Well, we'll start off with Heather Langenkamp. Now, Heather Langenkamp returns as Nancy, and I really liked her in the first one. Here, it's sad to say that her performance is kind of wooden. It's really hit and miss. I mean, she's got an okay chemistry with Craig Wasson, who plays Dr. Gordon. She doesn't really have a lot of chemistry with the kids, though, and that's disappointing. I mean, she's very wooden here. Her performance, she just doesn't seem like she's into it. I mean, I don't know if she did this film just for the paycheck, and she just didn't want to put in any effort, but a lot of the times it just doesn't show. Unless she's fighting Freddy. Because Kristen, played by Patricia Arquette, has, all of the teenagers being stalked, they find out that they can have certain powers in their dreams when they learn how to control them. And Kristen's powers is A, she can be a martial artist, and B, she has the strength to pull other people into her dreams. And when she first does that with Nancy, she does it in a scene where she's being attacked by Freddy, and she's being swallowed whole by this giant Freddy worm. She's being eaten by this worm, and she screams for Nancy, and Nancy falls asleep and falls into her chair and disappears in a really cool effect, and falls out of a mirror and stabs the Freddy snake in the eye with the mirror shard. And as Freddy regurgitates, Kristen out, and Freddy looks just at her and says, "You," in this great, animatronic, face. The intensity of that scene is brought there by Heather Langenkamp, which you don't really see in a lot of other scenes unless it's dealing with Freddy. There's another scene where they're all hypnotized together and they're about ready to fight Freddy, and Freddy is changing the office into the boiler room, into a fantastic set, and you see how she's frightened and scared and she wants everybody to be together. You believe that, but when she's just sitting there talking to the students, she's just very wooden. Same with Patricia Arquette. This was early in her career, and I just don't think she's anything special here. She didn't show any, I'm going to win an Academy Award type of talent at this time, but she's not horrible. She's not fantastic. She could scream, with the best of them, though. She's got a fantastic scream here. But even though those two aren't that great, the rest of the characters save this film. You have, like I said, Dr. Gordon, played by Craig Wasson. He's great here. I really like the Dr. Gordon character because you can tell he cares for these kids. He wants them safe. He wants to do whatever he needs to do to protect them. And he cares for Nancy. He wants her safe as well. There is a wonderful scene where they walk into a bar because after Dr. Gordon has talked about this nun that I mentioned, you find out that they need to get Freddy's remains. And they need to bury Freddy's remains on hallowed ground. And Nancy said, he's asking Nancy where the bones were kept. And only one person knows, and that's her father. and they find him at a bar. And basically, after part one, Mom's been dead. She was killed at the end of the first film, and Nancy and him drifted apart. They have no relationship. He's no longer Lieutenant Thompson. When we see him, he's wearing a security guard outfit, which I think is cool, and he's just drinking his life away. So he refuses to tell Nancy anything. He says she's crazy, blah, blah, blah. So Nancy leaves to go check on the kids. And then, Dr. Gordon says, they say something, and then Thompson says, I don't believe we've met, friend. Saying that to Gordon. So Nancy leaves, and then he comes by, and he says, hi, I'm Neil Gordon. Now we've met. And he throws the table over. He grabs Thompson and throws him up against the wall, and he says, you may not care whether Nancy lives or dies, but I do, and you believe that. It's, that's what makes his character, likable. His passion for taking care of these kids. I really enjoyed Philip, the sleepwalker. He's the one that makes the marionettes. He was very likable for what little he was in it. Lawrence, or Larry as he's credited, Fishburne. He plays Max. He plays an orderly. He's literally in it maybe a total of 10 minutes, 15 pushing it screen time, sprinkled here and there. But he's fun, he's charismatic, he's likable, everyday guy. You really like him. A lot of the characters. There's a character named Jennifer who's just thrown in there. She's okay. Taryn, a former junkie. She's likable. Will, the paralyzed Dungeons and Dragons guy, he's really likable as well. All of them are. Now, here's Kincaid. Kincaid is played by Ken Sagos. Now, you're either going to love Kincaid or you're going to hate Kincaid. There's no in between. I fucking loved him. He was fun, witty one-liners, didn't take shit from anybody, wasn't scared of Freddy. He was an asshole there in the beginning, and then by the end of it, he was there to help the group. I really liked him a lot. And then even Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims, played by Priscilla Pointer. She's there. She wants the kids to be protected, but she's also there to make sure that they get the medical treatment that, she thinks that they need. So there's that clash between her and Gordon, which is great. Great performances overall. And I liked John Saxon as this broken down former Lieutenant Thompson. Great performance. I like his chemistry with Craig Wasson because it's him and Dr. Gordon who have to go find Freddy's remains, and Saxon wants nothing to do with this shit. And he shows that, and then, basically Dr. Gordon's forcing him to do this against his will, and he wants nothing to do with it. And they got a good chemistry on, together. And then finally, when they're confronted by the spirit of Freddy, which I'll talk about, Saxon goes from wanting nothing to do with this to full of rage, and he says, I killed you once, you son of a bitch, and I'll do it again. So, wonderful. Loved it. The gore. Not a lot of gore, but what gore there is great. There really isn't a lot of gore. I think the goriest part off the top of my head, not counting like skeletons and a couple, one of the characters is killed by getting, stabbed in the chest, but it's done in the shadows so you don't see it, is probably, and I mentioned spoilers, but there's not going to be that many fucking survivors in this film, is Philip's death. Now, Philip, like I said, is a sleepwalker, and he makes marionette puppets. So this scene starts out, his nightmare starts out in this cool stop motion effect where his marionette puppet with the clay face morphs into Freddy's face, and the hand morphs into Freddy's hand, complete with, knives coming out of the fingertips. And Philip's laying there, and, marionette puppet cuts himself down, walks over, turns into Freddy, and slices him down the arms, down the legs. And then his fucking muscles come out and up to the ceiling. And you hear this, weird sound effect while he's walking, like this, being played like he's a puppet. And the gore is great, and one of my favorite shots of this scene. Now, there's more to it. This isn't how Philip dies. There's more to it, though. There's you see the effects of Philip walking. You see, all the muscles coming out of his arms. But it's the shot of his foot, because we see just a bare part of the floor. And then we see a couple droplets of blood. And then we see Philip's foot come on the ground. And his fucking foot is just open, and the wound is exposed, and you see the fucking muscles just stretching to the ceiling, and it's disgusting, and it's awesome. Best use of gore in this film. The other scene of real gore is there's a character named Joey who goes into a coma during one of the hypnotherapy scenes. And Nancy's sitting there, yelling at Freddy inside of him, causing the coma. And you see cuts start on Joey's chest where it says, "Come and get him, bitch." This is where Freddy starts using the word bitch a lot. But yeah, so not a lot of gore, but man, that scene with Philip, makes it worth it. Score is still really good. There's some different takes on the original score from the first film. Fantastic soundtrack by Dokken, including Dream Warriors, which is probably one of their most popular songs that plays during the ending credits. What else? Now there are some low points here, other than the acting by Patricia Arquette and Heather Langenkamp. Is as much as I'm praising the stop motion effect for the marionette puppet scene. And there's also a scene where they get Freddy's skeleton, Gordon and Thompson, and it comes to life and it's battling them. When the stop motion of the skeleton moving is fantastic. There's some bad green screen, blue screen here though. When Philip's, walking, normally he looks fine, when he's hypnotized, he's being tortured, and he's walking, and people think he's sleepwalking. There's a shot where he walks through the door, and it's bad. There's, when John Saxon, and Craig Wasson are fighting the Freddy skeleton. The Freddy skeleton looks great, but you can see... When they're fighting, you can see the skeleton is moving in front of a green screen or something like that, and sometimes the fight doesn't really sync up. Like when it hits Gordon in the face with a shovel, it doesn't really look well. Or when it stabs, John Saxon and lifts him up, that doesn't really look that well because Saxon looks like he's grabbing one of the arms and it doesn't sync up real well. So that's pretty bad. But other than that, I don't think there's that much shit in this film. The set is fantastic. I mentioned this, when we're in the office and Freddy is turning the office into the boiler room, and the lights turn red and everything is closing in on them, and you see the tables falling over and sitting on fire, and suddenly the walls turn into the metal boiler room walls. Fantastic. I love the opening nightmare, like I mentioned, with Patricia Arquette's Kristen. And it starts off, she's building a papier-mâché house of Nancy's house from the first one, while eating spoonfuls of instant coffee and chugging it with Diet Coke. Eventually she falls asleep, and she's in Freddy's house. And she picks up this one little girl that, Freddy's after, and she's running from Freddy down all of these corridors, and she walks through one door, and then she bumps into something behind her, and she turns around, and it's a teenager, hung, by a noose, and then she sees it's a room full of them. Great idea. I mean, we see... And then the way that nightmare ends, like I said, that causes her to cut her wrist. is really cool that I won't spoil. I like the practical effects in that. This is where we finally get to hear the classic "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch" line, which is where he takes out Jennifer while she's watching Critters of all things. Well, she's watching Critters, falls asleep, and then she wakes up and she's watching the Dick Cavett show with guest star Zsa Zsa Gabor, and Dick Cavett turns into Freddy and claws Zsa Zsa, which is fucking funny. Yeah, I don't know how else I can praise this. I will say, oh, and again, everybody who has seen this movie or has at least know who fucking Freddy Krueger is. This is where we get the kill where Freddy's fingers turn into hypodermic needles when he's fighting Taryn, the former junkie, and her arms open up and her track marks turn into little mouths that suck, waiting for the needles to hit. So, yeah, I don't know how much more I can praise this film. Very little to complain about. Those two performances that are just kind of meh. Some bad, blue screen, green screen, which doesn't take me out too much because I know it's fucking 1987. But everything about this film is great. I'll say 85 to 90% of the characters are likable. Great performances. Like I mentioned, I won't get too much into it without spoiling too much, even though you probably already know. I liked the Sister Mary Helena stuff, where we learn Freddy's backstory and how to defeat him. The fact that, like I said, the Dream Warriors have superpowers is a really cool twist. Set design, what little gore there is, really gets ya. Docking music. This movie is still scary, in parts. It's still horrifying, but it also is fun. It takes the fun factor and amps it up a lot. So I highly, highly recommend A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. I put this, like I said, I put this up with the original. Someday I'll say, you know what, my favorite is the original. Someday my favorite is Part 3 Dream Warriors, and it's hard to choose. But yeah, highly recommend Part 3 Dream Warriors. Wes Craven returned with a bang, and I'm happy. So alright, there you have it. Thank you for watching. If you liked this review, I have also reviewed other films from the series. I have a playlist if you want to check it out. I have playlists of a bunch of shit. I'm not going to go through it. Just go ahead and check it out. If you like what you see here, give the other videos a shot. I just fucking said that. Anyways, also, please like and subscribe. Share my stuff. If you don't like what you see, tell someone you hate, and maybe they'll like what they see. If you like what you see, tell your friends. Tell Aunt Esther, anybody. And with that, I will say, cheers. Still drinking water. If you want to know why, check out my previous video. Yeah, I'll just say, how do I fucking end this? I try to end these with a quote from the movie sometimes, and then I usually, lately I've been drawing a fucking blank. Damn. Oh well, I'll just say, cheers, and who gives a fuck what you think?